In the summer of 2010, at the tender age of 21, my closest friend and I embarked on a season of wild abandon, forsaking all notions of adult responsibility. We chose revelry over maturity, and as the days stretched into nights filled with blurry celebrations, it came as no surprise that we found ourselves in dire straits as summer waned. Our carefree antics resulted in both of us being evicted from our respective apartments, forcing us to seek refuge in our parents' homes until we could regain our footing. One fateful evening, my mother's home became our sanctuary, and we immersed ourselves in the virtual zombie apocalypse of Left 4 Dead, oblivious to the advancing hour. When the clock struck 2 a.m., reality rudely intruded, and my friend Cam decided it was time to call it a night and return to his mother's place. However, a small hiccup arose. He had neglected to settle his phone bill, rendering him incapable of summoning a cab independently. In those pre-Uber days, our sole recourse was to directly contact the cab company, so he borrowed my phone to make the necessary call. Within a mere quarter hour, the familiar yellow cab arrived outside my mother's residence, and Cam bid me farewell as he vanished into the night. Little did I know that this night would take a sinister turn. Shortly after the cab departed, my cell phone rang, and I answered instinctively, recognizing the caller as the cab company's central dispatch. Yet, the voice on the other end sent a chill down my spine. A woman's voice, eerily calm and unsettling, identified herself as Badger Cab, and claimed she was calling on behalf of Cameron, asserting that his cab had arrived. Confused, I informed her that my friend had left at least 10 minutes prior. Gazing out the window, I still spotted a car idling on the street, its brake lights casting a faint glow in the darkness. Thinking it was another cab sent in error, I attempted to dismiss the peculiar call. But the woman's voice persisted, repeating her demand for Cam to exit and board the cab. Her words now carried an impatient edge, as if she hadn't heard my response. The atmosphere grew tense, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Her voice seemed trapped in a labyrinth of echoes, resonating through a fog-draped void, and I couldn't pinpoint what made it so unsettling. In a bid to reassure myself, I reiterated that Cam had already departed, but this only seemed to amplify the woman's insistence. Then, inexplicably, the call was disrupted by peculiar noises, as if the wind were howling into the microphone, and suddenly the line went dead. Fear gnawed at me, and my heart raced. Without hesitation, I phoned the cab company once more, and this time a man answered. My voice trembling, I recounted the unsettling encounter and suggested they may have mistakenly dispatched 2 cabs to my location. To my relief, he assured me that there were no female cab drivers on duty that night, confirming that Cam had indeed been picked up earlier by one of their drivers. However, despite this reassurance, an eerie sense of foreboding persisted. The dispatcher and I pondered the possibilities together, trying to make sense of the strange encounter. We speculated that someone might have spoofed the cab company's phone number, a disconcerting notion in itself. But why would someone go to such lengths to lure a customer into their car? And more perplexingly, how did this enigmatic woman know that Cameron had used my phone to call for a cab? When Cam finally reached his mother's place safely, he wasted no time calling me on the landline to discuss the unnerving incident. Given his history with a relentless stalker, he couldn't help but wonder if this unsettling episode was somehow connected. He had been tormented by this individual for years, even obtaining a restraining order due to her invasive and disturbing behavior, including stalking him and breaking into his apartment. Yet, even with his theory in mind, we found it hard to believe that the stalker could have known about Cam's cab call and my mother's address. We lived in a quiet suburban area, far from prying eyes, and my mother had a different last name than I did, making it unlikely for her to have easily found our address online. So, while it appeared to be the most logical explanation, it left us with lingering questions and unease. As weeks passed, the unsettling encounter faded into memory, but the mystery endured. We had no choice but to accept that sometimes inexplicable events occur, and until a more plausible theory emerged, we were left to contemplate the enigmatic events of that summer night. Amidst the bustling urban landscape I call home, my daily routine has been significantly impacted by a series of unusual events. Persistent car troubles and the omnipresent pandemic have forced me to limit my travels, pushing me towards an increasing reliance on food delivery apps for sustenance. In these uncertain times, the convenience of ordering through such apps initially seemed like a solace. Little did I know that what started as a routine experience would soon turn into an unsettling and surreal ordeal. On an ordinary day around lunchtime, I found myself engrossed in household chores, tending to cleaning and organizing my living space. As hunger began to creep in, I contemplated my lunch choices and eventually settled on Uber Eats. Ordering a delectable meal from a nearby restaurant sounded ideal, and with enthusiasm, I placed my order. After finalizing the order, I decided to pass the time with some entertainment while waiting for my meal to arrive. Minutes ticked away, and within a short span, the app notified me that a driver named Anthony had accepted my order. I couldn't help but notice that Anthony was listed as a bike rider, and to my surprise, lacked both a profile picture and any previous delivery records. Despite this oddity, I initially dismissed it, thinking that perhaps I was one of the first customers for this new driver. I watched the app's map with mild amusement, anticipating my meal's journey to my doorstep. However, time continued to pass without any sign of movement from Anthony. A full half-hour elapsed, and my concern grew. Wondering if there was a technical glitch or an issue with the driver, I decided to reach out to Uber Eats support via the chat option. A responsive representative promptly assisted me, and I explained the situation, leading them to reassign a new driver for my order. It was a peculiar occurrence, but I didn't dwell on it at the time. The second driver, Laurie, shared strikingly similar attributes to Anthony, an unknown bike rider without a profile picture or any delivery history. Giving them the benefit of the doubt, I allowed an additional 20 minutes to pass, hoping for the best but bracing for the worst. I tried contacting Laurie through messages to establish communication and inquire about any possible issues. Unfortunately, there was no response from Laurie. As my bewilderment and hunger grew, I continued to check the Uber Eats app, wondering if there were platform issues. The situation took a disconcerting turn when I decided to contact support once more for further assistance. They assured me they would reassign the driver and apologize for the inconvenience. However, what unfolded next defied any rational explanation. The third driver, like a repeating glitch in the system, turned out to be yet another bike rider named Robert. Much like his predecessors, Robert possessed the same enigmatic attributes: no profile picture, zero delivery history, and an unsettling sense of uncertainty. Frustrated and bewildered, I considered cancelling the order altogether, unwilling to endure this bizarre sequence of drivers any longer. Before I could make a decision, an unexpected message appeared from Robert. "Hello, have your food. What's your phone number?" the message read. I was both bewildered and alarmed, and I replied quickly, declining to share my personal information and suggesting we communicate through the app. Instead of acknowledging my message or offering reassurance, Robert persisted, repeatedly asking for my phone number and inquiring about my age. The tone of the conversation took an unsettling turn, setting off alarm bells in my mind. Summoning every ounce of courage, I contacted Uber Eats support once again, urgently requesting their intervention to cancel the order and protect my privacy. The situation demanded immediate attention, and the support representative was attentive and understanding, assuring me that they would address the issue promptly. They cancelled the order, and I was promised a refund for the inconvenience. Despite this relief, my anxiety lingered. At that very moment, while I was on the phone with Uber Eats' safety team, an eerie voice whispered from outside my door, "Miss Joanna, I have your food." My skin crawled as chills ran down my spine. How did this stranger know my name? I glanced toward the entrance, where a heavy door stood between me and the unsettling presence outside. Terrified, I relayed the situation to the safety team member on the line, who listened intently and advised caution. I cautiously peered through the metal screen door, and there he was, a man with an eerie demeanor and a cold, unsettling gaze. He seemed agitated, his expression shifting from an unsettling smile to one of anger upon spotting me on the phone. Consumed by fear, I implored the man to leave, feeling increasingly unsafe in his presence. However, he remained undeterred, persistently demanding to know who I was speaking to on the phone. As his aggression escalated, he began pounding on my door and forcefully gripping the doorknob, as if attempting to force his way inside. Shivering with trepidation, I locked the heavy door, which offered some semblance of protection, but the man continued his belligerent behavior. The Uber Eats safety team member stayed on the line, urging me to call the police immediately for assistance. Panic enveloped me as I reached for my phone to dial the authorities. While I spoke with the police, the man's agitation showed no signs of abating. He lingered outside my home for what felt like an eternity, while my concerned neighbor recounted witnessing his disturbing behavior. Apparently, he had retreated to a parked truck nearby, accompanied by another individual. The two men remained suspiciously stationed there, casting an aura of malevolence and watching passers-by. Summoning courage, my neighbor provided a detailed description of both the vehicle and the man's appearance to aid the police investigation. The situation was surreal and deeply unsettling, shaking the foundation of my sense of security within my own home. I share this unnerving experience in the hope of finding support, reassurance, or even someone else who may have faced a similar situation. The lingering fear and unease from that incident have left a lasting impact on me, and I am now cautious about using food delivery apps in the foreseeable future. To the enigmatic Uber Eats driver who sought my personal information and attempted to breach my sanctuary, I implore you to never cross paths with me again, as the memory of that day continues to haunt me. In 2018, an adventurous spirit seized hold of me and three of my closest friends, igniting a desire to embark on an unforgettable journey to Bali, a mesmerizing island. Bali's enchanting allure, combined with its budget-friendly appeal and the luxury of time on our side, made it an irresistible choice for our week-long escapade. Our meticulously planned itinerary comprised sightseeing, savoring local cuisine, conquering towering peaks and mountain climbing adventures, and savoring the vibrant atmosphere of beachside bars. It was the quintessential Indonesian vacation, promising us a remarkable experience. And memorable it was. Bali's awe-inspiring beauty left us utterly entranced, and the local culinary offerings tantalized our taste buds like never before. Each bite was a culinary revelation, delighting our senses with a myriad of flavors and aromas not encountered back home. From mouth-watering satay to exotic rendang and the refreshing sweetness of tropical fruits, every meal was a gastronomic adventure. Yet, amid this paradise, we couldn't ignore the growing issue of drug prevalence among the local population, with mushrooms being a particularly popular vice. We were often approached by individuals eager to peddle their illicit wares as we roamed the streets, and it seemed as though the shadows whispered tales of their clandestine dealings. One encounter stood out, as an enthusiastic man attempted to lure me with a dubious 2-for-1 deal for a transcendent experience to meet our Lord and Saviour, Jesus. My friends playfully urged me to consider the spiritual encounter, but I declined, knowing the dangers of succumbing to such temptations. Despite these occasional unsettling encounters, we remained confident in our ability to navigate such situations, partly because some of these individuals appeared to be under the influence themselves. We hoped that our vigilance and collective strength as a group would keep us safe throughout the trip. However, the true horror of our otherwise enjoyable vacation unfolded on the final night of our stay. As we returned to our modest Airbnb, an inexplicable unease washed over us. The low price had required a security compromise, as the place lacked a proper locking mechanism for the door. Instead, 2 wooden doors swung inward, and the only way to secure them was by wedging a primitive wooden block through the holes mounted on the doors. It was far from ideal, but we had managed for 6 days without any trouble. On that ominous night, our sense of safety shattered when we discovered the wooden block missing. Our diligent search efforts proved fruitless, and we resorted to using a makeshift solution, the selfie stick, as a feeble attempt to wedge the doors closed. Naive in our optimism, we retired to our beds, hoping for an uneventful night's sleep before the journey back home. But fate had other plans. In the dead of night, I was abruptly awakened by peculiar clicking sounds emanating from the door. Initially, I assumed one of my friends was engaged in some late-night activity. Curiosity led me to investigate, and as I drew closer to the door, a cold shiver of trepidation coursed through my veins. The doors were slightly ajar, and the deformed selfie stick revealed signs of tampering. My heart pounded as I peered outside and witnessed a chilling sight. 3 shadowy figures peering through the gap between the doors, their intentions nefarious and obscure. They were dangerously close to entering, desperately pushing the doors open. In a moment of instinctive bravery, I confronted the intruders, demanding to know their purpose. One of them held the missing wooden block, deepening the mystery. They tried to explain they had found it outside our Airbnb, but their flimsy excuse fell flat. Summoning my friends, we united against this unnerving intrusion, and the perpetrators fled into the shadows of the night. Fear and adrenaline coursed through our veins as we remained vigilant, fearing a possible return of these unwanted visitors. With the first light of dawn, we mustered the courage to report the incident to the reception, only to be confronted by an even more unsettling revelation. The description I provided of the supposed cleaner hired by the Airbnb did not match any of the female employees they had on staff. The realization that we had unknowingly permitted an impostor into our sanctuary during our absence sent shivers down our spines. Who was this individual? What sinister motive had brought them to our door at such an unholy hour? The questions echoed in our minds, and we couldn't help but feel a deep sense of vulnerability and invasion. Thankfully, we were fortunate that nothing of significant value was stolen, and most importantly, we emerged unscathed from this nightmarish encounter. We couldn't help but wonder what would have transpired if I hadn't awoken on that fateful night. It was a chilling reminder of how a seemingly routine adventure could swiftly morph into a perilous ordeal. As our time in Bali came to an end, we bid farewell to the island, haunted by both its beauty and the eerie encounter that had marred our otherwise cherished memories. This extraordinary journey had taught us that even in the most idyllic of settings, we must remain vigilant and cautious, for danger can lurk in the shadows, ready to pounce when least expected. About a decade ago, roughly in my 27th year of life, I found myself caught up in a deeply unsettling experience. At that time, I was in a relationship with a musician who was part of a band. Our living arrangement was rather unconventional. We occupied a converted garage situated on a service lane that catered to businesses and had houses behind it. The life of a musician often led to erratic schedules, and my partner had returned home in the early hours of the morning, seeking much-needed rest. Meanwhile, his bandmate was temporarily residing in a parked bus nearby, where they stored their musical equipment. One morning, around 5 a.m., I was jolted awake by blood-curdling screams reverberating through the otherwise peaceful streets. These distressing cries belonged to a woman, accompanied by a man whose voice dripped with aggression, repeatedly threatening her life. The neighborhood we lived in was far from idyllic, but it had its own charm. At that time, the area had yet to undergo the transformation into a sought-after locale adorned with boutique shops and close proximity to the beach. Instead, the house from which the terrifying sounds emanated appeared abandoned, casting an eerie sight with its two-story structure in decay, tattered curtains, and decaying wood. To add to the eerie ambience, several broken-down cars lay scattered on the property, as if they had been picked apart by scavengers. Little did I know that someone was actually residing in that dilapidated dwelling. Summoning my courage, I approached the front door and peered outside, only to witness a distressing scene. Across the street, a man with a formidable presence wore a full leather jacket, matching pants, and sturdy boots. His face was partly adorned with a tattoo bearing the name Tomoko, and his demeanor indicated the influence of mind-altering substances. His bloodshot eyes were alarmingly visible, accentuating his anger and instability. He continued his menacing pursuit of a terrified woman dressed in pajamas, whom I presumed he had targeted earlier. Reacting instinctively, my vocal cords acted independently, and I shouted, "Hey, what's happening here?" "I'm calling the police." The confrontation between the enraged man and the frightened woman momentarily halted as they both turned to look at me, standing near my door, dressed in nothing but pajamas and a flamboyant leopard print robe, my feet bare against the cool ground. In the face of danger, I hesitated not. I swiftly dialed the emergency number, reporting the volatile situation as it unfolded before my eyes. My courage was not matched by physical strength. Standing at 5 feet 10 inches and weighing approximately 80 kilograms, I knew that the man could overpower me with ease. Nevertheless, driven by an innate sense of justice and a desire to protect the vulnerable, I grabbed a substantial plank of 2x4, which I had wisely kept behind my door. With the police on the line, I marched outside, my heart racing with fear and determination, the wooden plank resting on my shoulder. I was fully aware of the gravity of the situation, but the rush of adrenaline fueled my determination to assist the woman in distress. Surprisingly, my actions drew no immediate support from the others sharing the space with me. Astonishingly, neither my partner nor his bandmate in the bus stirred from their slumber, leaving me feeling a mixture of anger and frustration at their inaction. Undeterred, I was soon joined by another woman from across the road who, like me, could not bear to stand idly by while someone's life was threatened. We exchanged brief words, both lamenting the lack of courage displayed by our male counterparts. It was disheartening to witness the apathy shown by those who should have stood up to protect their community. Several days later, a woman approached me at my residence, her eyes filled with deep gratitude. She thanked me profusely for my intervention, explaining that the man who had caused such terror was no ordinary individual. He was a deranged and addicted individual who had developed an unhealthy obsession with her niece. Ignoring all boundaries and pleas for him to leave her alone, he had forced himself into her life, seeking comfort where none was welcome. In a fit of enraged desperation, he had subjected her to a brutal assault, chasing her through the streets in a terrifying display of violence. Relieved that my actions had at least temporarily halted the danger, I was eventually informed that the man had been apprehended by the authorities, who had taken him away in handcuffs. The image of his arrest, with a lit cigarette hanging from his mouth, provided some solace in knowing that he could no longer harm others. Although the nightmare seemed to have passed, the memory lingered, etching itself into the recesses of my mind. The fear of a potential return weighed heavily on me during moments of solitude, as I contemplated the fragility of safety and the unsettling reality that courage and resolve could sometimes be scarce commodities in the face of adversity.